those who served in office previously. But to me, the courts have shown their independence by the very fact of the way these interlocutory matters have been decided. To me, the nation should take this as a clear sign that the New Dawn government is sticking to what it has always said, that it would create an environment in which institutions that are charged with law enforcement and basically with matters to do with the administration of justice are given independence. If you think of it, those very individuals that have complained that they are being vilified have gotten temporal victories, if I may, through these interlocutory decisions. By the way, just to break it down, I would define an interlocutory decision as a temporary decision on a matter that does not go to the final decision of the court as to whether a person is guilty or innocent. And so, for me, this is a very positive sign, and the nation should take it as such that, look, the fairness of the proceedings before these courts has now been demonstrated by the fact that they are able to make decisions in favor of the accused persons. The very accused persons who not too long ago were saying there's a witch hunt and that they were not sure whether they would get justice before these courts. These decisions that we have seen in the last couple of days prove the contrary. And so I think that rather than take it that it is an indication that the fight of corruption is being lost, we must, as Zambians, take it that this is a demonstration that our colleagues who are facing proceedings before the courts of law will receive a fair trial. And that really is the long and short of it. At this point, I'll pause because I know that there will be several questions, and I'll allow you colleagues to ask before I make also a specific announcement regarding the National Prosecutions Authority, as it were. Any questions? There have been a lot of burning issues, so I'm interested to hear the questions from the perspective of the media.
Do you have any questions?
Comments, contributions? Yes, please. I'm on TV.
Yes, I'm in China. Maybe just your take on the Anti-Corruption Commission. We do understand that quite a number of people have been called by the commission, but what is coming out from the general public is that usually it looks like they are ill-prepared for some of these cases, because usually they would arrest somebody, then the outcome is always against them, almost always.
Okay, so this is exactly what I've been addressing, Chimunia. In any legal process, there are two possible outcomes. It's either you succeed or you don't. And it is premature to say that the outcomes in the cases commenced by the Anti-Corruption Commissions are against them. What we have are temporary decisions. I must stress this, interlocutory decisions on matters of a technical nature. In relation to the seizure of property, for example, where the question that was before court is whether or not the property belonging to the accused person should be seized pending the determination of the matter. And that those are the decisions that we've had so far. On interlocutory matters, I've just given one example. That does not mean that the accused persons have been acquitted. It doesn't mean that, or that the case is over in any way. In fact, this is just the beginning. Some of these trials have not even started in earnest. They've just taken plea. So, it is wrong to say, in my view, and with due respect to your question, that the ACC is going ill-prepared. That is not a correct perspective, because the trials on the substantive question, whether or not these individuals that are facing trial did commit the offenses they're accused of committing, is far from even being over. It's only at the point when there is a conviction or an acquittal when we can say that the trial at the first level, the subordinate court level, has been concluded. It is only then that you can judge the law enforcement agencies. It's not just about the ACC alone. to see whether or not they did a good job. The evidence will speak for itself, and I would like to invite the members of the press here to be positive and proactive and follow these trials as they begin, and the evidence will come out. You will get to understand the allegations that are being put against these accused persons and the extent to which they are alleged to have plundered national resources. And it's important for the people of Zambia to see that perspective, to hear the narrative from you, and as the fourth estate, you have a very serious job to do, because right now there's a lot of speculation. I do appreciate that many of the people out there, being not trained in law, would believe that when there's the house, for example, of an accused person is handed back to them after a seizure, that's the end of it. No, that is not the end of it. It is simply one technical step that has been taken. The trial is yet to take place, and those assets, by the way, if they are found to have been obtained illegally, will still be subject to forfeiture to the state, permanently and finally, if there is a conviction. So this is just the beginning, and let the people of Zambia rest assured that our law enforcement agencies are going into these matters well prepared, having conducted proper investigations, and that they are equal to the task. Let there not be a mistake that there's a challenge in that respect. And I'll also give another very critical aspect of looking at these matters. The public has already stopped talking about the FTJ University saga. Had it not been for the strong work that is being done by our law enforcement agencies, the general public out there would not have known that there is a saga of this nature. To me, that is a big, big positive, because then matters relating to how our resources have been used are coming to the fore. So let's not forget easily the good work that has been put in by these law enforcement agencies to bring out some of these matters. Technical aspects do happen in court. We expect it when we go as legal practitioners, as persons practicing the law, that there could be a decision that's not in your favor. Provided that it is at interlocutory stage, I do not think that it should be a cause for unnecessary worry on the part of the people of Zambia. The work is being done, and it's being done diligently. As we all know, we've seen a lot of revelations that have been made, and these matters are going before court. Let me also make the caveat that financial crime matters are very, very complicated. I've said this previously on different platforms. And so you do not expect that they will be dealt with in a manner that is without the necessary diligence. Right from his investigation, and even as the case is prosecuted in court, you expect to see that there will be a lot of technicalities that will be involved, that the evidence will be complex, and that it should be something that should be taken with the best caution possible, not only for the investigators and the state, but also for the accused person, so that they have all the opportunity to exculpate themselves before the courts of law, as the case may be. Any other question with specifics?
Honorable Minister of Justice, one of your parliamentarians was on a named television station, and in discussing these matters that are before the court, you are seemingly suggesting that Parliament should consider dismantling the ACC altogether so that the work is left with the police. What would be your position on that submission by one of your colleagues at Parliament?
Well, everybody is entitled to a point of view. I think I did hear the submissions by my honorable colleague, and they have merit in them. There have been arguments from time immemorial as to whether you need, for example, 3 separate law enforcement agencies all dealing with some of the overlapping criminal offenses that exist. So the argument is that, for example, do you need to have Zambia Police, do you need to have Drug Enforcement Commission, and do you need to have ACC when some of these offenses that are sitting on the various statute books overlap? I personally believe that there is a specific role and specialization that the Anti-Corruption Commission has, which justifies its continued existence. And in that regard, I would think that rather than saying we disband it or dismantle it and basically do away with that law enforcement agency, we would rather harmonize the various offenses which sit under the enabling provisions that allow the Anti-Corruption Commission to pursue corruption matters, for example, and matters relating to abuse of authority of office and the rest of it. And then also where there are overlaps, that those are dealt with effectively through a legislative review process. So there are arguments in respect of both the potential routes that can be taken. But as at now, I believe the ACC is necessary and that it will continue to do a good job. Although the general members of the public might not realize that as at now, because of a couple of matters that have taken place, which seem to cast the Commission in negative light. Yes, please. Any more questions? Now, colleagues, there has also been the issue of in relation to the decisions that have been passed recently by some of our courts. As a general comment, I would like to state that the New Dawn government remains committed to judicial reform. However, I want to state here that our approach to these matters is one that will be anchored in the rule of law. Whether or not particular decisions have been made against, seemingly against the government, that should not be the basis of judicial reform. The basis of judicial reform is to ensure that we aspire to make the courts more responsive to the needs of the people of Zambia. And we also want to state as New Dawn government that judicial reform will always be driven by the judiciary itself. We respect the separation of powers, and each particular institution, each particular arm of government will play its role. We understand our role as executive to create the environment, and likewise the judiciary will move, and I'm aware that it is already moving towards judicial reform. And of course the legislative process will also be undertaken in terms of bringing these matters before Parliament as to how the reform will be taken. Some of it will be done in parallel with the constitutional review. With these concerns that have been raised by the members of the public, I believe that the judiciary is equal to the task, and they will be looking at the various criticisms that have come from the members of the public. On our part as the executive, we continue to create an enabling environment by facilitating the independence of the judiciary. So please, colleagues and members of the public, take note of that particular aspect as well. Yes, Mr. Chun.
What we are receiving now is from the Command District Court that some UPND youths went there and they have threatened to deal with Mr. Lusambo as well as Mr. Nakachinga over some of their comments about the president. So maybe just a reaction.
Okay, I haven't had sight of that report. You're saying you're just receiving it now. But yes, suffice to say that that approach is not one that sits with our mode of governance as the New Dawn government. We do not support the taking of the law into one's own hands and the use of draconian measures. We will reiterate that we must always observe and respect the rule of law. However, that being said, there is need to understand whether those are indeed UPND youths. If that is the case, then I would call upon the UPND leadership to address this very quickly, because we do not want to go back to where we came from in the past. I will also take the opportunity to ask colleagues in the opposition particularly, and these two colleagues' names always come up, Honorable Nakachinga, Honorable Lusambo, in use of the language that they choose to deploy whenever they are airing their grievances. There is no need for one to use language that is injurious to the persons of others. That is not the essence of democracy. That is not to say that I'm justifying the activities that may have been undertaken by those youths who have spoken of. No, I'm asking for those two individuals and any other individual that wants to express themselves, exercise their freedom of expression, to please appreciate that freedom of expression does not mean that you use insulting language, derogatory language, and unpalatable language. It's not necessary. It creates a situation of intolerance in the country, which is not where we want to go. There are so many positive things that are happening now in our country. We have been the first country in Africa to have the Euro, the Expo with the European Union. Following that, the European Union's offer to put forward developmental funds in several, in the sum of about 30 billion euros, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. These are positives, low-hanging fruit. We are seeing direct benefit to the country already. A deal was signed just on the back of the Euro conference that we had yesterday. Why can't we talk about these positives as the people of Zambia? We are fueling the negative narrative of individuals who want to use the newly found freedom of expression to draw us backwards. And I want to appeal here to the people of Zambia not to give credence to these types of individuals. Let us be positive, let us concentrate on the positive rather than the negative, and we'll move together as a country. The more we go on social media and misuse the media as a platform for these individuals who want to insult and be negative in their comments, the more we're going backward as a country. We're drawing ourselves back to what we voted against and making an earnest appeal for us to avoid doing that. Let's not give these people a platform. In fact, let us all speak out against this new vice that has come of abusing the freedom of expression. Then perhaps instead of them gaining relevance, they'll realize that they are not going anywhere with that sort of language. I would like to, before we, unless there are other questions going forward, before we close, I would like to bring it to the attention of the nation that I have taken the decision to immediately dissolve the board of the National Prosecutions Authority pursuant to Section 7, as read, Section 7 of the National Prosecutions Act number 34 of 2010, as read together with Section 26 of the Interpretation and General Provisions Act, which allows me as minister to, and appointing authority, to dissolve the board. So with immediate effect, the board of the National Prosecutions Authority is hereby dissolved, and also this is in accordance with Article 270 of the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrades. Unless, like the minister said, there's other questions that you might want to pose. Okay, there's a question at the back there. Yes. You might stand up.
Good afternoon, Honorable.
Good afternoon. I can see you fine.
Okay. My name is Sharon from the Tanzania DC. There have been some calls from some stakeholders on government to provide a roadmap in the constitution-making process, so I'd like to get a comment from you on that.
Yes, thank you very much. The work for relating to the constitution-making process is still underway. We are still doing consultations with internally and with stakeholders. And so it is only at the close of those initial consultations that we'll be able to issue a roadmap. As you will be aware, the process from beginning to end must be protected. It must be a consensual process. And so whilst we understand and appreciate that the constitution-making process is one that requires to be undertaken urgently, we also want to leave nobody behind in the process. So we are still undertaking consultations. It is only at the end of those consultations and the internal processes that we will be able to give a roadmap which will show us transparently the processes that will be undertaken to amend the Constitution. Suffice to say that we are also considering a one-off amendment of those matters which are non-contentious in nature, and that requires engagement with all stakeholders, including all political parties, both those represented in Parliament and and those that are not represented in Parliament. The idea is where there are obvious lacuna which have a direct bearing on the manner in which the country is governed. For example, those relating to by-elections, those relating to whether or not members of Parliament should return to council and sit on councils in view of the CDF, the enhancement of the CDF fund. Those are possible low-hanging fruit which we would like to engage and then maybe propose a one-off amendment. But as I said, we are still consulting in that respect. Thank you.
Final question?
Yes, just last question. There are some civil society organizations that have written to the Chief Justice over the declaration of assets issue. This includes Chapter 1, TIZ, and the Lands for Community Action. Just an update on that.
Well, it's only the Office of the Chief Justice really that can give a specific update in relation to the response from that office to that letter that has been written by the civil society organizations. But as a general comment, they are within their right to reach out to the judicial arm of government and find out whether there has been total compliance with the provisions of the ministerial code of conduct. I think that should be. And then that would help to resolve whatever concerns that they have. Again, I reiterate, for us it is ruling by respecting the law, and therefore if there is clearly, if there is an anomaly in relation to the filing of these statutory declarations, that is not fatal. It can be addressed through the necessary compliance by those who are expected to file. To my knowledge, a good number of colleagues have actually complied. So it's now a question of ensuring we dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I also want to take the opportunity that now that you've asked to reiterate that it is not correct to say that no declarations have been filed at all. Please let me not be misunderstood here. What I am saying is that declarations are required to be filed by any person that puts in a nomination to be elected as member of Parliament. So by and large, all ministers have complied with that by virtue of the fact that they are members of Parliament, and it's from the pool of members of Parliament that ministers are appointed. So at the point of filing their nominations, everyone filed a declaration. So the narrative that certain people have not filed declarations is incorrect insofar as it is a matter of fact and law that all MPs, upon filing nominations, filed declarations with their nominations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this should mark the end of our press briefing, unless there's another hand. There's no any other hand. Honorable Minister, thank you very much for giving us part of your time today. I know you have the busy schedule. We had to push you in the corner so that you can respond to some of the questions that members of the media and the general public have.